All right, today we're jumping into a fantastic classic folktale that explores a pretty chaotic idea. It's a wild story full of bizarre laws, a hilarious search for justice, and, best of all, a lesson in how real wisdom can outsmart even the most powerful kind of foolishness. I mean, really, this is the whole question the story is built around. It's kind of like a thought experiment. What if the people with all the power were, let's be honest, complete and total fools? Well, the results are every bit as ridiculous as you'd think. So, our story kicks off in this place we can call the Upside Down Kingdom. You see, the king and his minister got bored with doing things the normal way and decided, you know what? Let's make everything intentionally backward. Their very first big idea was to just flip reality on its head. Night was now for working, and day was for sleeping. Everybody had to run their shops and work their fields after dark and then go to bed as soon as the sun rose. And the penalty for not following the rule? It wasn't a fine, it wasn't jail, it was death. So yeah, people were scared and they just did what they were told. The second rule was all about the economy, and this one is a doozy. Everything, and I mean everything, in the whole kingdom cost the exact same price, one single doo-doo. It didn't matter if you were buying a huge bag of rice or just one banana, it was one doo-doo. Sounds great, right? Super equal. Except it totally ignores how things actually have, value. So into this crazy city walk our two main characters, a very wise guru and his disciple. The guru, he gets it immediately. He sees the danger hiding right under the surface of this cheap, upside-down world. He knows that a kingdom built on such silly ideas is basically a ticking time bomb. But the disciple, he sees things a little differently. He's totally tempted by all the super cheap food. So he ignores his master's warning. The guru leaves, and the disciple stays behind, just eating and eating. Bananas, rice, ghee, every single day. And the story says he gets fat like a street-side sacred bull. And trust me, that little detail is going to be very important in a bit. Okay, so while the disciple is living his best life, the kingdom's wacky logic gets put to the test. A bizarre accident happens, and it sets off this whole chain reaction of blame that really shows just how absurd the rulers are. Get this, a thief breaks into a merchant's house, but on his way out, the old wall of the house just collapses on him and kills him. So the thief's brother runs to the king, but not to report the break-in. No, he demands justice because his brother was killed while practicing his ancient trade. And the king, who just wants to look smart, promises justice will be done. What happens next is this incredible, ridiculous chain of finger-pointing. It's like a perfect parody of a justice system. The king first blames the merchant for having a weak wall. The merchant says, hey, it was the bricklayer's fault. The bricklayer says he was distracted years ago by a dancing girl walking by. The dancing girl blames a goldsmith for making her walk up and down the street by delaying her order, and the goldsmith, he blames a rich merchant. And this is where it's crazy, because the logic comes full circle. The goldsmith says the merchant who pressured him was the father of the very guy whose house fell down. The son is freaking out, saying, "My father's dead, I'm innocent." But the king, he sees things differently. So the king talks with his minister and comes up with this absolute masterpiece of legal reasoning. Since the son inherited his father's money, he must have also inherited his father's sins. So the son has to die for his dead father's crime. In the king's mind, justice has been served. But as they're getting ready for the execution, the kingdom's foolishness throws one last wrench in the works. The problem isn't about justice anymore. It's a logistics issue. It turns out the merchant is too thin. I'm not kidding. He's too skinny to be properly executed on the brand new stake they built. The king and minister are actually worried. Their whole big execution is about to be ruined because the criminal literally doesn't fit the punishment. So what's their brilliant solution? Reconsider the whole absurd sentence? Nope, of course not. The king just declares that they need to find a man who's fat enough to fit the stake. The crime is now totally irrelevant. Justice is out the window, all for the sake of simple, foolish logistics. And who do the king's servants find? Well, what do you know? It's none other than the disciple, who's gotten nice and plump from months of cheap food. He gets dragged to the execution spot, and it's only then, staring death in the face, that he finally remembers what his guru said. This is a city of fools. You don't know what they will do next. So, as the disciple is praying for a miracle, his guru, who has some magical powers, sees what's happening in a vision. He shows up right away, but he's not there to beg. He's there to pull off an amazing trick by using the king's own foolishness against him. The guru walks right up to the king and asks this really weird question. The king, of course, says, well, the guru is greater. So the guru demands, then put me to the stake first. Kill my disciple after me. And this just completely confuses the king. The disciple, who totally understands the plan, starts yelling that he wants to be executed first. The two of them get into this huge, loud argument over who gets the honor of dying first. The king is baffled. Why would anyone fight to be executed? He thinks there must be some kind of secret. The king demands to know what's going on, so the guru reveals his secret. He whispers to the king that this isn't just any stake, it's the stake of the god of justice. And whoever dies on it first will be reborn as the king of this country. The second one to die, they'll be reborn as the minister. It is a perfect lie, made specifically to appeal to the king's own greed. And with that clever lie, the trap is set. The king is thrown into deep thought, and you can just see the gears turning as the fools start planning their own downfall. The king just can't stand the thought of losing his kingdom in his next life. So he and his minister come up with a plan. That night, they sneak into the prison, they free the guru and disciple, and then they disguise themselves, and their own servants execute them, just as planned. When the townspeople find the dead bodies of their king and minister the next day, they totally panic. They quickly track down the guru and disciple and literally beg them to be their new rulers. They agree, but only if they can change all the old foolish laws. And just like that, the kingdom goes back to normal. Night is night again, day is day again, and sorry, you can no longer buy everything for just one dadu. And that brings us to the final, really interesting question the story itself asks us. Who are the real fools here? Is it just the idiotic king and minister? Or how about the disciple who let his own greed completely blind him to some very obvious danger? Or maybe, just maybe, it's even the people who went along with all these absurd rules just because they were afraid? It's a question that turns this simple folktale into a really timeless lesson about wisdom, greed, and what it really means to be a fool.